Hi, everyone. This is Catherine Henry. Welcome back to our program. I'm so excited that you could join us today. Every week I think that we are not possibly going to be able to live up to the achievements that we've had so far with really outstanding speakers, leaders across the extended reality spectrum. And today is actually is as exciting as ever. We've got some very exciting guests that I'm going to introduce to you in just a moment. But first, I wanted to back up a little bit and give you a little overview about myself. For those of you who aren't aware of what I did before XR technology, I spent 15 years looking at mega trends and as a spokesperson in investment banking and asset management, meeting with institutional investors, sovereign wealth funds, major banks, and pension funds, talking about mega trends, the long-term structural shifts that occur and will affect our lives, our economy, and the way that we work. And those are affected by a couple of things. The first is technology, economy, demographics, climate control, and resource management, as well as urbanization. So those five forces are usually the kinds of things where we're going to start seeing major disruption. And during the COVID crisis, we've been affected pretty much by all of those. All of those have been ended. And in fact, today I read a quote by a man who said that we have very little certainty about the epidemic or the pandemic itself, except that we really don't understand it at all. And so today I'm absolutely thrilled to have with us a futurist, author, XR superstar, Cathy Hackl, who is going to give us some insights into some of the technologies that will help address some of the issues that lay ahead of us. And from Italy, we also have Anthony Vitillo, who is a VR visionary and who is the head of the Scarred Ghost blog. Before we turn over to those interviews, I'd like to start off with an overview, sort of an umbrella about the conversation that we want to have in terms of the big picture trends that we're looking at today and the considerations that we'll be discussing throughout the program. Just going to share my screen for a minute. So basically what we're looking at are some major disruptions across the entire spectrum for every industry in every geography. And the main thing really is it boils down to the human element. Human resources is obviously therefore the first thing that we're looking at, as on the one hand, companies are pressured to try to maintain some sense of business continuity, but by the same token, they're facing a lot of internal pressure by workers saying, listen, we want more safety, more benefits, more protections. And on the other hand, thinking about the relationship between the internal employees and their external clients, suppliers, and other customers. And so that is a fundamental area, a schism, an area, a pain point that we're looking at. Also, communication and collaboration. Those of you who are watching, pretty much all of you from home and who are working at home, you know the frustration of trying to juggle multiple Zoom calls with large groups of people. And many people are starting to ask whether or not this really is an effective medium for communication and whether it is productive. Similarly, we've got maintenance and repair. All of those works are pretty much down right now because nobody can be in-house, and you've got very expensive machinery and equipment that needs to be maintained, not to mention the commercial and residential visits that need to be made that aren't being made. And so all of that work is being backed up as in a bottleneck. And generally speaking, business operations are all facing these kinds of bottlenecks, whether it's manufacturing or transportation, up on the higher end of the value chain, down to lower stream activities such as retail. So these are the kind of the challenges that we're facing that we feel that in many cases technology can help us address. But the fundamental question we have to ask ourselves is, what do we do when humanity itself is the risk? Now, some of you may remember that after September 11th, we asked ourselves many of the same questions, but it was different then. And the main difference was that back contingency plan effectively meant moving a team of people from one building to another. The concern was virtualization of data, of information, and that was the beginning of cloud storage. Cloud storage was born, as was software as a service, the idea being that precious assets, those knowledge, those resources, would travel with us wherever we are. But very few of us, if any of us, really imagined an era of contact-free or distance economy where the workers are dispersed like us today and who knows for how long. So today I wanted to talk to some of our guests who are really the experts in the technologies that are likely to help us work our way out of this situation. And so I would like to start off by inviting Tony Vitillo up, who joins us live from Italy. Benvenuto, Tony. Mi fa piacere vederti.
Grazie, Catherine. Your Italian is always fantastic. So thanks for inviting me to your live stream. And good evening. It's evening to everyone that is watching to us.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I can't start off the program without asking you how things are going in Italy. I know that you have been in this situation far longer than we have. How does it feel, and what sort of freedoms do you have at this point?
Well, actually, at the beginning we were like the country with the biggest number of people ill and death. Then the pandemic spread from us. That's bad news. Actually, since like 10 days now, we are allowed to go out from our home to visit relatives, boyfriends and girlfriends. So we have some less limitations, but still we can't go out as we want like before. And some of us still prefer to stay at home. It's still safer. So slowly we are getting better. Fingers crossed for the future.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. And I have to say that your country and your citizens have really conducted themselves with a great deal of grace. And they have really shared with us great example of resilience and humanity in this period. So I'm really glad to hear that you're well and to see you in person. Now, tell me, you are the head of Scarred Ghost, the blog. Can you tell our viewers who aren't familiar with your work exactly what that blog is and how you created it?
Well, for sure. So as you know, and people who follow me knows, actually I do lots of things in the RMVR ecosystem, like most of us people that are here on your live streams. So I'm born as a developer. I still do consultancies and development in RMVR. But most people know me for the platform, the Scarred Ghost. 3 years and a half ago, I started talking about my experiences, what I thought about some software, some experiences of mine when I had this project, this startup about full body VR SDK solution. And it started like a marketing meme, then it became something independent. And strangely, people started to read what I had to write. I was like surprised. I thought that only my mom was interested to read what I was going to write, but she doesn't know VR. So it was even a useless reader. But actually, people started to get interested in what I was going to say. And this demonstrated that lots of people are interested in VR. I was looking for someone giving some guidance. And slowly, I started to learning how to be a blogger, after also to do some videos on YouTube and such. So my platform, www.scarredghost.com, you can read reviews, you can interviews, tutorials, especially once a week, I publish a roundup of news about AR and VR. So if you got disconnected, you just read one post and you'll see update with AR and VR. I think this is my way to help the community and stay informed on the technology.
Okay, so talking about the staying informed right now during this challenge, you are a contrarian. I mean, many people would suggest that, this pandemic has really introduced a challenge that VR is ideally suited to address. So in other words, a lot of people would say that, the 2D, this flat digital world is really inadequate for sharing assets, for sharing information, for meeting in sort of a sense of, and getting a sense of real life and presence. And the other thing is education. So many of our students around the world find themselves at home and aren't able to conduct endless hours on Zoom calls. And I myself, I'm frankly a bit sick of them. But you're saying that maybe this isn't the best solution. I mean, talk to us about your view right now about VR. Is this a tipping point? Is this a watershed moment where more people are likely to migrate to this new platform?
Well, I think that what I've learned in all these years, exploring the markets, also hoping that this explosion of VR was going always to happen and never was coming, and this for my business is always not easy to handle. What I've noticed that VR is always growing, is always demonstrating always more its value. But the problem is that it takes time to really take off. And probably, in my opinion, it will take at least 1 or 2 years to really take off. And probably the pandemics will speed up this process because it is making lots of people understand the potential of the technology. And so as a consultant, as a developer, I'm getting more requests about people that want to meet online, do workshops online, sell things online, all with virtual reality. They say, hey, I've seen this technology. Can you help me in integrating it into my business? And so I agree that this thing is going to help VR in getting more visibility. But there are two problems. In my opinion, at first, the technology is not completely ready. So I think that to have a meeting is still better to have Zoom. I hate Zoom now. I use it too much, Zoom, Teams, Skype, but they're easier to be used. All people have the device to use them. They have less bugs. While VR, the devices are still cumbersome. The VR solution for meetings has still too many bugs. So it's coming, but not now, in my opinion. And the second problem is the pandemic. We don't know what are the consequences in the midterm to the economy. So, and no one has no idea what is going to happen in July, September. Probably there will be a big depression. Probably nothing will happen. We don't know. So we have to be very cautious. I prefer to say that this is not going to happen and to see to happen. Because if we say that it's going to boom and then VR doesn't boom, actually people will start to write, VR is dead, VR is a fluke, it's a fad. No, just take it easy. It will take it time. It will succeed. But in my opinion, not this year. Probably next one or the 22.
You say that, and yet at the same time, I mean, we look at, say, IDC. They've been looking at the market for some time now, and they're estimating, as I said, a 77% compound annualized growth rate over 5 years. And when I talk anecdotally to some of the VR meetup platforms, whether it's Virbella or Engage or whomever, they're telling me that they're experiencing a massive volume that they can barely handle. And some of them have signed on. Last week we had some of the major film festivals are looking to go virtual. Conferences and universities are starting to hold their classes online. So doesn't this undermine that? I mean, I know it's a tendency to be pessimistic because we've been talking about the advent of VR for several times, but some people really believe that this is the catalyst.
Okay. I mean, I can take also, for instance, about myself. So, given my experience, I think it's a general one. Also, if you're the analyst, my business in the last 6 months has changed a lot. So, first, 6 months ago, I was talking more about developing things, maybe for exhibitions, maybe for marketing or for training, maintenance, this kind of experiences. And lately, I'm mostly working about virtual events, virtual meetings, virtual festivals. So it's like that there is a part of VR that is exploding, the one of events, festivals get more traction. And there are other parts of VR, like for instance, location-based VR that are really dropping a lot. So it's like, it depends on what kind of sector you're looking at. This is my experience on myself, and also what I've read, for instance, from Superdata or other analysts, DigiCapital. So analysts are trying to understand how to read this situation. It's not easy for them. It's our first pandemic, also it's the last one, actually. So I think that for some sectors it will be beneficial, but for the overall VR, probably it's a tie. That's the problem. We have to see the effect on the recession, actually.
I do feel, however, that maybe it hasn't taken off. A lot of people have associated, especially in the States, gaming is the first thing people point to whenever when I tell people I work with VR, AR, I'm an XR consultant, they say, oh, I've seen The Void, if they're not in the industry or in a specific role. And so it takes a lot of time in explaining how all of these can be used along the value chain of an entire any business model, and cite examples from oil and gas to Walmart and retail. So I mean, there are a number of applications, but I feel like with headsets reaching, say, the $600 and $700 point, the enterprise, it's a really good investment, because honestly, that's the same amount that they would invest in, say, a cell phone. And once they have it, then then people will be more inclined to use it even for other activities. So I do feel that this could be a watershed. The question, however, is availability, and then also which of the 10, I'm throwing out the number, but there, and you can be more specific, but all the different headsets, the competing headsets that are available. Talk to us about XR for enterprise and headsets. What do you like?
Well, as you said, it's a complicated topic. You said there are lots of devices. Also, if you also take into account the Chinese ones, really hundreds of them probably. So I think it's important to stick probably to the most famous and reliable headset. What is interesting is that, in my opinion, what is the best consumer headset is not necessarily the best enterprise headset. I make an example. The Oculus Quest is probably the best consumer headset on the market now. So unless you are like a pro gamer and you need the Valve Index, or you are interested in some kind of hacking stuff and you can have interest in the Vive stuff. On the enterprise, I think there are other values. In my opinion, for instance, for the standalone headset, for the 3D F1, the best company is Pico. That is the most unknown to most consumers. And the reason is that they can ship to you hundreds of headsets. They have a very affordable price compared to the Oculus Go, for instance. They have a clear business licensing. They have business services, business configurations. And so it's very valuable for the standalone 3DOF. For the standalone 6DOF, the Quest actually costs 1,000 euros, and the Oculus for Business program is not clear if it has started or not. So some partners can have a Quest with business licensing, some others can't. It's a bit of confusion. So other companies like the same Pico, like HTC with the Vive Focus Plus, that offer the headset with the less, cost less than $1,000, that offer enterprise services, assistances, bulk installs. So all these services that are interesting for companies may have an advantage. Talking about PC headsets, for the arcades, there is the LBO expert Kevin Williams that has posted a picture of the Vive Cosmos Elite saying, is this the new headset for location-based VR? Because HTC Vive has a great power for industrial and location-based virtual reality. Again, because it's very focused on the enterprise. The Valve Index is a superior quality, but if you're looking at the communities, many pieces of the index, especially the controllers, are getting broken. Then you can't buy it. It's sold out everywhere. You can't buy it in big bulks. So the values are different. When you're a company, you have to ask other things, not only what's the price, what's the best graphics, but also, does this company can send me 500 headsets if I need them? If one piece of the headset gets broken, will this company substitute it very fast? What are the services? What is the reliability of the headset? And so on. So I think that in the consumer price range, probably the HTC Vive Cosmos Elite is what will substitute the Vive Pro and will be a very interesting enterprise headset. If you go higher in price, probably companies like, for instance, the Xtal, they offer this kind of 8K super big headset, or Vario that can give you a headset in the center of view. You see perfect vision. I tried it and it's not perfect, but in this spot, when you look forward, we have no screen door effect. It's amazing if you have to do, for instance, prototyping and design in virtual reality. So probably you have to ask things about the business licensing. You have to ask about the features you need. If you do prototyping, you need super high resolution. So HP Reverb, so Xtal, so Vario. These are more or less the headset to have a look now.
I think that your points are well made, and I've lost a little bit of it because of a lag, but I believe your points were well made with respect to the difference between sort of the standard consumer headset and what you might want to consider versus the enterprise version. and thinking long term in terms of where is your content housed, what sort of information are you trying to use, and also thinking long term in terms of even 5G connectivity, degrees of freedom, as you mentioned, as well as maybe inside out technology and other things that you want to consider, given the space in which you'll be using it. I would believe that, thinking of talked about Qualcomm and 5G. Can you talk to us about how that's going to revolutionize the way we do it? And is that going to bring us one step closer to a hybrid, sort of a magic leap type of headset?
Well, thanks for the question, because yesterday I published this post where I asked some question to Qualcomm about when the 5G standalone headset are going to arrive. And I broke the news because they told that they're going to arrive in 2021. So have a timing for the headset like the Quest, but with 5G connectivity. I think that we should look at it probably in the mid and long term. So in the short term, probably the advantage is that you finally have a headset with which you can go outside the office. So you don't need a Wi-Fi anymore. You are free to take your VR and AR headset wherever you want with 5G connectivity, with a very fast connection. So you can offload some tasks to the cloud. You can download content very fast, and so on. So this is the short-term advantage. For the long-term one, the dream that we have is that the headset can offload everything to the cloud. So have cloud rendering. That means that you don't have your glass to do all the calculations, all the rendering of the graphics of your game or the enterprise application, whatever. But it is edge server in the cloud that very fast streams everything and send everything to your glasses. A bit like Google Stadia, if you ever heard of it. And this means basically that you could have theoretically a glass that is like the very standard frames. So the ones that you use every day if you have some height impairment, vision impairment, and go around with these very light glasses that the battery lasts maybe one day and so on. So the dream is having VR headsets and AR headsets that look like standard visuals or standard glasses. But we think that we need lots of time to get there, probably 10, 15 years. So it's a long-term vision, but we have to look at it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that looking long term, again, I think a lot of people are trying to figure out how the next 6 months how they can navigate this, because there is a high likelihood that this pandemic will revisit us, and we want to be better prepared going forward. And I feel like, for me personally, and I think we talked about this, the experience of going into VR can be transformative for some. I told you about my experience going into VR, and the first time I tried it, I thought, I've always loved technology, and I thought, this is it. This is the area I want to go in. And I think it was very similar for you. Your background is in computer engineering, your career to now this space. Can you talk to us about the future of migrating to this platform over the next 6 months? Do you think that, how do you feel, who's going to be the first sectors to move over?
So first sectors
I'm imagining
to move
education
to VR or to VR and 5G? So to VR, I guess, to VR and VR.
Take it as you wish.
I go. Okay. Okay. So for 5G, the answer is quite simple, since it's going to roll out quite slowly. The headsets are not there, so probably take it easy and wait for 2021. So don't try to rush this year. Probably it's not the year of 5G. It is the year where 5G probably will start to have less hype. But we understand what is useful for. Regarding VR, I think that from my experience again and for what I've read, I'm seeing that there is the standard sectors where it is more appeal. It's industrial design and industrial training, because training is now still the biggest sector where VR is relevant, because you can make people have training for safety operations, for dangerous operations in VR, so companies can save lives. while using this kind of training, and is important for them. Design and prototype. We have examples every day about why is this relevant. So Bell has declared that can design a helicopter in some months instead of years while using this. Also, other application in industry, more of AR than VR, is showing how to assemble pieces, how to solve problems with maintenance. Lockheed Martin has declared like last week that at NASA, when they're crafting a spaceship using AR is increasing the productivity of 90%. So these kind of industrial settings, industries are understanding that if they don't use AR and VR, they fall behind the competition. They don't spare money, they don't save time, and so they're going to adopt it pretty fast. So probably at first in the US or in China, and then in the rest of the world. Regarding education, I think it also depends on the country. So I say in Italy, no, because we still just move on the blackboards. We're still a bit slow regarding improving our education. It's a bit of a problem for us. But in China, whenever the government forces schools to use virtual reality, so they can't not use VR, they're forced to do it. So of course, education in VR there is growing a lot. I think in the US, people also are getting the potential because there are some, especially some subjects, like for instance, chemistry, that are perfect in VR. You can make a chemistry lab in virtual reality and kids can go there and learn something new while having fun without having to have a real laboratory. So in full safety, they can play with the virtual one. Regarding other things like learning history, I see it more as a complement because developing application with high quality graphics to explain all the history will be too much expensive. But there are experiences like, the Anna Frank one, Rome Reborn, that already makes everything. So returning to your question, I think for training, industrial stuff, and in this period, we're seeing also big evolution of events in VR. But we have to see, like in 6 months or 1 year, if this trend will remain.
I think that there are a lot of, sorry, it's a bit of a lag. Please excuse me. I think you're right that for immediately, we've seen immediate implications for healthcare, for education, for training, and those are the low-hanging fruit. And I believe that those are areas where that people can take advantage of this technology today because it is far superior. It's interactive. You've seen some of the demos on my site, and I'll be happy to invite more people on this program so that people can see firsthand how tremendously powerful some of these experiences can be and have proven to be statistically, not just anecdotally through individual cases, but in research studies. So I think that's really important. But to your point earlier, there are still a lot of bugs, and I think we can't close out this conversation without also addressing some of the more notable failures. And I want to raise the issue of Magic Leap with the caveat that none of this affects or has anything to do with Cathy Hackl. We just wanted to talk about what was a big dream for many of us. I mean, I'm a big Magic Leap fan. Not just Cathy, but Alex Coulomb and Lucas Risotto. They had tremendous people behind the creative side, but it kind of failed spectacularly despite being heavily funded. Anthony, you have more insights into that. I know. Tell us your thoughts.
Well, actually, your culture has always been more on the side of the haters than the lovers of Magic Leap, but not of the community. I think the community of Magic Leap was great. Some of the employees were great people. We know Cathy, but also many other. Rio Carefa, I spoke with sometimes ago with John Gaeta. He's a super genius. The problem with the company, in my opinion, has been not much the big money raised because people see lots of money, but you see what Facebook actually spends in research every year is like 10 billions for AR and VR. So 2 billions is not that much in perspective. The problem is that we never understood all this hype they created just to launch a product that was normal. After that, the board was going to chase after a consumer release, so games, artistic stuff. It was not talking about the dev kit, but a creator's edition. So there was all this fluff that our techies don't like a lot. And after that, I can accept also the fluff, but you have to deliver. So Apple is also makes a lot of lights, lots of super duper things, but they deliver what they promise. Apple is creating, for instance, the AirPods that are the only wearable that people keep every day on the head. While Magic Leap actually has never delivered anything really relevant on the side, and business side, they was following a market that was not practical because people don't spend 2,000 euros for a AR headset that has very limited field of view and has some games. And what makes me angry actually that everyone in the community was saying that. So we don't understand why they made these errors. It's when I saw the news of the so many layoffs. Well, the difference with Magic Leap is actually.
Oh, sorry. Microsoft. When did you see the news?
Sorry?
When you saw the news, I'm sorry.
I can hear you. Can you repeat, please?
You said when you saw the news. I cut you off. My apologies.
So I was saying that when I heard the news about the layoffs and whatever, I was very disappointed actually because I hope that they always had like a plan that we couldn't see. Also, even if I never liked the company, I always hope that they didn't fail because everyone has seen that whale. So they're like a symbol for augmented reality. And if you tell some investors as a big company that was so famous is going to fail or go towards the bank, that's not good spot for investments in AR and VR. I really hope that they understand they have to throw away this big vision and probably have to focus on a niche, become a bit smaller, maybe focus, I don't know, an enterprise and the industry or something, because ultra focused like every startup, and then if they succeed in the niche, they can expand. I really hope that this is going to happen especially for the employees of Magic Leap.
And HoloLens too. That's last question is, how do you feel about that? Because for me, I believe that the lighter and more autonomous these headsets become, and where we can also integrate multiple different assets in them, it is really the killer app, the iPhone, or holy grail of this whole industry. You like HoloLens 2 a lot. Tell us why, because I'm on the fence.
Well, HoloLens 2 is not sexy at all. So it's just very Microsoft thing. You see it and say, okay, but it's something that it works, especially even more than the device. It's what is around that is important. You have Microsoft Teams, so you have Microsoft Dynamics for remote assistance, for maintenance. It's all integrated into the device. You can connect with Azure services. You have behind a reliable company like Microsoft. And the device is not sexy, but it delivers. So
I feel like they didn't really promote it that much. I mean, listen, they didn't support it nearly as much as the HoloLens 1. I spend a lot of time at Microsoft on the flagship on Fifth Avenue in New York. We do a number of events there. And I'm always trying to demo the HoloLens 2. They've never had it there. And so obviously it's very important for enterprise, and so they'll get the early editions and they can use those. But I feel that they're really not, and I've got clients who would love to try it out if they get their hands on one and they're not based in New York. So it's very frustrating. I feel like they haven't supported it sufficiently.
Well, it's complicated. I mean, from what I understood, also talking with people in touch with Microsoft for the HoloLens, is that HoloLens 1 was like thrown in the wild also to indies, to companies, to other people. With HoloLens 2, they're very focused much at the moment on enterprises. And also, I tell you what some people told me. At least in Italy, the request for HoloLens 2 actually is like 100 more the availability of the device. Yeah, so more times. So they don't need to make some big marketing. Already companies already want it. But it's not easy to have it. So to have it, you have to have like a channel, demonstrate what you want to do with the device, and why it can also be useful for Microsoft to showcase the ability of the HoloLens.
But that's the cart and the horse situation, and that's part of the problem with the Quest. I mean, I feel like we need to see a lot more M&A, and we need to see a lot more money thrown towards the technologies that are closer to winning, because right now there's such a bottleneck between the kinds of technologies that we really need to get in more hands that will allow us to grow this industry, and that's one of my greatest frustrations.
Yeah, but it's different in the sense that Zuckerberg will be very, very happy to give the Quest in the hands to anyone who wants it. I think that Microsoft instead is just more focused on enterprise, big companies, big partners, big projects.
Fair enough.
It's a vision that is different.
Well, fair enough. And, they're still going, and others have fallen by the wayside. Well, thank you so much. We're going to bring you back for some questions after we bring up Cathy. Thank you so much for the insights and the backup. So the question mark is VR, is this the year VR finally takes off? I think it's a question that sounds like we're going to ask again and again, maybe even next year. Well, the next guest really needs no introduction, but I'm going to introduce her anyway. I mean, she's really in the pantheon of technology stars. She, for XR, she's our Sheryl Sandberg, and she's really rapidly becoming a household name when it comes to people in tech, not just women in tech. But she happens to be a woman in tech. She's a Latina. She's an author. She is a thought leader, and she is Cathy Hackl. And I couldn't be more honored to have her on our program today. Cathy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Catherine. The honor is all mine. So happy to be here.
It's you're too gracious. Now I'm really excited because I feel like I have kind of a scoop here. You are coming up with a new book. Your first book, by the way, was one of the groundbreaking books in XR. Talked about how to use this new medium, how to use this new platform. I studied virtual reality filmmaking, and it was around the time that I was still in school, and obviously we were absorbing as much information about the industry as possible, and there you were already leading from the front when nobody had even raised that question. So to have you here and talk about your new book is even more exciting. Can you tell us a little bit? I don't know how much you can tell us, but tell us about the theme and where your thoughts are right now.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm so glad that Marketing New Realities with the first book was something you found interesting. My co-author at the time,
Absolutely.
Sam Wolf, and I, we decided to have a book. We wrote one of the first VR AR marketing books ever written. It's been wonderful to have people reach out and be like, hey, I read your book, or I had it in my class. And I think that kind of inspired me to do, okay, what's my second book? And this time around, I'm focusing more on the augmented workforce. So basically the book is called The Augmented Workforce, How AI, AR, and 5G will impact every dollar you make. And I'm my co-author. Go ahead.
I said that makes perfect sense, but go on.
Yeah, my co-author is John Bazell. He works at Epic for Unreal Engine. So really cool to kind of have him as my co-author. And the title of the book, when we were thinking of what would be the title, we're thinking, back in the day when people were traveling, right? He and I were both traveling quite a bit, and we said, what kind of title could we give the book that if we were at the airport, at one of those bookstores at the airport, we would pick it up? Right. So that's kind of how the title worked itself out. And what we're trying to do is look at emerging technologies and how they're impacting the workforce. People tend to be negative and think only about automation, robots taking jobs away, etc. But in this case, we're really trying to look more at how, for example, augmented reality can upskill, retrain a worker. Same thing with virtual reality. How is artificial intelligence working with people as well? So yeah, it's kind of a very broad view of these emerging technologies, how they're changing our workforce, the idea of work. We're going to have lots of experts featured in the book. So yeah, very excited about it. And I think it's going to be a good contribution to the business world.
I can't think of anything more timely. I mean, I myself have been looking, I've written dozens of articles about different aspects, and I was also looking for an overarching theme, and I think you really hit it on the nose, because 5G is really going to open up everything. AI, of course, is the current that runs throughout everything, but it's really the platforms and the machinery that tie it all together. So I think you really got a very unique take on that, especially now. Can you talk to us about how some of these technologies are going to help us get through this? Because there's so little visibility that at the very least we can have the right tools by our side to help us move forward.
So one of the things I've been thinking a lot about, and moving a little bit away from workforce per se, or from the book, is I've been giving a lot of thought, like what are some of the things that are going to come from this pandemic and what we're going through, and how can emerging technology help with that? So I think we are going to see a big wave of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, both from the frontline workers at hospitals, et cetera, also from people stuck at home, right? What if you're stuck at home in an abusive relationship? What if you're stuck at home? Or you know, what if you're a homebound senior? And like, it's just, there's so many different levels.
And the dependencies, people who have got opioid dependencies. We're seeing a lot of bars and cocktails on the internet right now.
Yeah, so definitely think about how can we use VR and AR. How can we use VR and AR to help people with that side? Because we've always talked about VR being used for trauma, for phobias or trauma, right? I think there's going to be an opportunity there to help use the technology to better humanity and to help those people and to come out of everything that's going to be left. Another thing I've also been thinking about is anger. The idea of everything that's bringing up, not only in the U.S., but if you look across the world, right? The anger, resentment that is kind of brewing and seems accelerated in some ways. How can we use VR, right? I was listening to a talk, I think it was last week, and they were talking about the whole concept of, anger during the pandemic, and instead of having going to a rage room, which they do exist, right? Instead of going to a rage room, having a rage room in VR and being able to get, let stuff go that you just need to let go, right? So definitely those are things I'm thinking about. Another thing, Catherine, and I think you and I talked about this briefly when we had our call, was I also think about what happens with us as humans if this pandemic makes us a touchless society in some way. And you talked about the contact-free economy. That's part of that. But what happens if we're a touchless society in some sense? And definitely, first kind of started thinking about this a couple of weeks ago, and then I heard it also at another event that I was at, and it just got me thinking about the implications, right? It offers an opportunity, right, for companies in VR and AR and haptics, great opportunities there, right? But also, what happens with us as humans if it's a contact touchless society. So yeah, just thinking, as you can imagine, just thinking about a lot of different things right now when it comes
We're all there. We're all there. In fact, we just posted something the other day from Christophe Mallet, who I'm sure you know. He's the one who heads Body Swaps. And it was a scene in which you could see a healthcare practitioner learn their craft, and then they get some feedback on the level of their empathy. And so it's adaptive learning, right? So it's AI driven. So they're able to learn how to be empathetic social workers and do their job well. And studies have shown that actually people respond very, very well to these sort of things. It's almost like when you're on an airplane and suddenly somebody confesses their whole life to you. For whatever reason, in technology, people feel very comfortable about spilling their guts in a way that they might not in one-to-one contact. And I think that's a great thing, because it would also be potentially very accessible and affordable and take away some of the burden from healthcare. So I wanted to ask you too about the anger management, though, because I have my master's degree and my focus was international marketing. And I learned VR a good 10 years after I did my MBA. But this is the thing. You and I both know how powerful this medium is as a communication device. And my concern is that because it can also assuage emotions, it can also drive emotions. And depending on it's not something I want to talk a lot about. I don't want to give anybody any ideas, but in theory, it could work both ways. What are your thoughts about that, and how could we monitor that?
Yeah, you gotta look at the good things about immersive tech and the bad things, right? Your brain believes what it sees. So, there could be very negative side effects to that. And especially, I think about, oversaturation of, if we always, because in VR, we always talk about empathy. Well, if we get oversaturated with all these 360 videos of refugees, are we even going to care to a point, right? It gets to that point where did I watch too much of this? And then I feel desensitized.
At the World, they used to call this compassion fatigue. And I know you're in Washington, D.C., so I'm sure you talk with a lot of NGOs. But yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, there's only so much, right? So we need to be very careful in kind of understanding that. I think as everyone, like Tony, you, myself, all the practitioners in XR that go through the show, we are all responsible. We all have to be responsible about the future of the industry. We all have to have very open conversations with our clients about what privacy data, what are we doing with this, right? Especially in immersive tech where you're collecting, you can collect very private data about someone, very intimate data. So we all need to be very honest with ourselves and with our clients about the good and the bad and what we're doing with potential data that's being collected.
Whether or not you're being evil.
Yeah.
Don't be evil.
I always say that. I don't want to find out that, and this brings up a point about right now what's happening with contact tracing and everything, right? Right now we're giving up our privacy because it's helping us keep us healthy. What I don't want to happen is that in 12, 24 months, we find out that, and some of the data we use for a nefarious purpose, right? So I think, it's part of those conversations that need to be had. That's why, in all honesty, I know we're having lots of conversations, but we need to have more conversations with leadership here in the United States, for example, leadership in Capitol Hill, and get them to put on a headset, get them to understand what is this technology. Because you remember when Mark Zuckerberg went to Capitol Hill and he was interviewed, and it was like, Senator, we sell ads. Senator, we sell ads, right? It was painful to watch because even the senators didn't get it. They didn't understand what it was.
It was painful.
Senator, we sell ads. Let alone them understand what is immersive technology. So, Catherine, I think we lost you. But yeah, continuing with that, I think we need to educate leaders. We need to educate, educators. We need to make sure that we're all kind of evangelizing about the technologies, the good and the bad with it.
I think there's a really good question, really good comments. And I wanted to also mention, you've probably seen that even in gaming, we're seeing a tendency for more gentle games that Animal Crossing, for example, has really taken off in this period. And then there's another woman who's spearheading a games company that's really not even about pursuing a specific goal as much as doing something passive and more gentle and interacting with other people. They kind of hacked the system, and they started changing the way that games are traditionally structured. It's just very male, aggressive, goal-oriented, shooting zombies, shooting other people. So I think that's a really interesting thing. And as practitioners, to your point earlier, having these boundaries, right? Maybe we should be like doctors and take an oath of not to be evil, because in the headset, it's really tempting to tell a client, hey, guess what? We have all sorts of tracking and da-da-da. And by the way, when these things are also sponsored by a big telco company that is, 5G, they're going to have access to all of our information. So it's tempting as marketers to say, I can get you everything, as opposed to saying, what do you really need? And I think that maybe that's a different way we can frame that conversation.
Yeah. What are we collecting? What are we using it for? And what are we going to do with it afterwards? Right. So having those conversations up front, I think, are incredibly important.
Now, what's incredibly important to me, Cathy Hackl, is that you are, again, one of the stars in the pantheon of technology, and you've been a leading voice in LinkedIn. You're on every stage around the world. So presumably, you could kind of do anything. So if you could write your own dream job or the next step, what would that be for you?
I'm still trying to figure it out. I know you guys earlier talked about Magic Leap, and I was one of the casualties of the layoff. So that was hard. But it's giving me some time to kind of just think about what is next for me, right? A lot of soul searching, a lot of thinking, having great conversations though. I've opened myself up to have conversations with a lot of folks around the world, and that has been wonderful. Yeah, I don't know. I want to continue evangelizing for the industry. My main goals, what I will say is my main goals is keep moving the industry forward, right? Through talking, through thought leadership, through what I've been doing, which has been very useful. I want to continue to inspire more women and minorities to come into the industry in different facets. Very important to me. And personally, I mean, I want to, right? Yay. And for me, just I don't know what the next step is. I mean, I'm completely in, I love VR and AR, and I'm completely in love with strategic foresight, which is my futurism work. So I'm trying to figure out how do I merge emerging technology with strategic foresight and help, companies prepare for uncertain times using these technologies and make more strategic, have more strategic decision-making capabilities.
It's interesting. I first of all, I wanted to say that, I'm just going to dovetail on the strategic foresight. I call it virtualization strategies, and it's kind of the second part of what happened after 9/11 and everyone thinking data and cloud storage. But what about knowledge transfer? What about skills upskilling? What about the regulatory framework? How can we shift that all and make it available on the cloud so that's G? And what other technologies along the value chain? So I mapped out all these different technologies, and I like the fact that you don't just look at VR or AR, you look at the entire spectrum of technologies and how they come together to solve specific challenges. And so whether it's strategic foresight or virtualization strategy, in my view, I think this is a fundamental skill for businesses going forward. One thing I will say to your earlier point about women and diversity is when we look at numbers, okay, the Latino population is approximately 20% of the US workforce. And yet, if we look at the Googles and the Facebooks, they barely have 5%. Either one of them, at maximum 5%. And by the way, in the statistics, they don't tell whether or not these people are maintenance and mailroom, admin, what percent are really senior people. So as I look to you, I mean, you got into this game. I mean, I've been in technology for 15 years, evangelizing in financial services, but, always doing the same thing, trying to do the same thing, but you've been really on the main stage. So watching you, it's kind of like a bellwether. We really expect for you to go good places because that's a signal to the rest of the industry that they're taking women and minorities seriously, and they're willing to commit to us because it makes good business sense.
Yeah. And that's my hope. I'm having great conversations, and I think there's a few options right now of places to go. So I'm excited. We'll see what happens, right? Definitely stay tuned, kind of thing.
Right. Well, absolutely. And we're excited to hear about your book. Now I'm going to bring back up Anthony. I might drop off because you know how it is with my bandwidth. But I wanted to, while you guys have, feel free to pick up the conversation. I'm going to look onto LinkedIn and see what everybody else is saying. First of all, anybody watching, if you have any questions, please tell us, or just say hi. Tell us where you're viewing from and what's exciting to you, whether you're bored at home or you'd be happy to have a headset. Now's your time to access our friends.
Well, while you're looking at the comments, Tony, what do you think of Unreal Engine 5?
Well, I'm still to recover. I got too much excited about the video. I was like this in some moments as a developer, but I'm a Unity developer, so I'm not going to have all these cool things anytime soon. But especially the lighting, it's amazing. And the triangles are the new pixels, triangles are the new fetish for AR and VR also. The ability to import any kind of model inside your application gets optimized for real time. So now it's just this teaser. If it works also with virtual reality, it's like, wow, you can import all models and create VR applications that are super optimized for the hardware. That will be the dream, like an engine that optimizes all assets. It's a big advantage. I think at Unity headquarters tonight, they're not going to sleep very well because it's really something cool. Of course, we have to see how it will be optimized. So now it's a teaser. We have to try it and see all the caveats. But anyway, the video is impressive. Also, I'm excited about something for the PS5. Even if I'm not a console gamer, I'm interested a lot with this new console, the VR headset that will come with them. So
I want to just interject I want to interject really quickly. We have people joining us from Italy, from Amsterdam, from New York, from Puerto Rico. We have, lots of people from all around the world. So this is a really great turnout. A couple of questions. We have had people who agree with you, Cathy, about the issues regarding mental health and isolation, and I think that's really important. Somebody asked early on, Mark Rabin said that, please elaborate. I don't know if that's my comments. I'll be sharing my presentation for another time. Let's see, we have Just VR. Magic Leap is awesome. Well, we all love it. It's unfortunately, they didn't run the business very well, but I think that's a different story. And that's, again, my comments alone.
No comments. No comments.
That's it. The caveat there. Hello from Toronto. So we've got, we also have University of Kent here. Mental health is an issue. Oh, here's one. Padma, thank you very much. What would enable AR, VR in 5G? Do you get more flexibility with 5G than border bandwidth? Does anybody want to talk about edge computing?
Well, I've already talked about this, so I leave Cathy to answer this question for her side.
Well, I think, you're going to have lower latency, faster speeds, more bandwidth. I mean, that's going to enable VR and AR to kind of take it to a next level. I do think, Tony, with the pandemic, like, this is not necessarily the year. Like, things are going to take a little bit longer. But definitely, it'll, from a connectivity standpoint, I can't wait.
Okay. And somebody said, how do we incorporate blockchain with technology? I'm not so sure how those two, I haven't got that far. Tony, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, actually, some use cases, blockchain is on one of those technologies, so super big hype. Everyone is trying to implement it everywhere, everything like 5G, AI, and such. Some examples can be, for instance, Somnium-Space. So you can have your virtual worlds with the blockchain determining the ownership on some virtual lands, or you can use to sell virtual goodies that can be used in AR and VR. So you can have in Sansa, another virtual world, you can create some virtual assets and then sell them with the cryptocurrency of the platform to other people, and so have a distributed some kind of ownership or things. Of course, the applications are really too many. Any kind you need some kind of decentralized system to detect the ownership of something, and this something is virtual and augmented reality. Blockchain is the way.
Well, I have to say that we're lucky if half of the prototypes that we see on that are already late stage development now are working. I think we really need to refine what we're doing already before we get to blockchain. But it is one of those things that is ultimately that we're working towards. All right, we're going to wrap up in a couple of minutes. Cathy and Tony, do you have any last words or anything you'd like to share with our audience as they go back to their home?
Well, the first thing is that I'm super happy to be here with you two, especially not to say anything bad against you, Catherine, but Cathy, I follow Cathy since a lot of years, so it's just a matter of time. I really love whatever she does, so I invite everyone, the few crazy people that still don't know her, to follow her on LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever. She's an amazing person.
Well, actually, I am. I also think we should start checking out Scarred Ghost. I mean, if you're looking at the developments and you're looking at infrastructure investments or for the future to future-proof your business and get back to business with XR Technologies, definitely consult a consultant. I mean, you've got 3 on the screen, but importantly, do your homework and do that independently. And Scarred Ghost is certainly a tremendous resource for that. I'd like to thank everybody out there for watching this program. I know that each one of you in your homes is facing your own difficulties, your own challenges right now. It's not easy being home and working from home and being isolated. There are no answers. None of us know where this is headed or how long this is going to last. And if it comes back, the world is upside down. But to the extent that we can acknowledge some of the tools that will get us out there and just focus on the positive aspects, then we're glad. We hope that we've been able to bring your day forward and give you some sense of light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you so much to my guests, Cathy Hackl and to Tony Vitillo. Grazie mille. Thank you, Cathy. I wish you well, and I look forward to following you both. And to everyone else out there, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.